Hey, what's up, Spencer? My name is Everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I haven't posted in a little while because things have been difficult. If you live in America, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you live outside of America, then you've probably heard of the crazy shit that is happening here. It has been very difficult and overwhelming and hard to process all of the things that are happening, especially because so much is going on every single day, and it's just ooh, ooh, ooh. In many ways, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know what to do with my life. I don't know what to do with the future, and it's tough. There's so many things about this that is very difficult. And so today I wanted to do something simple, try and get myself back to a good place, have hopefully just a fun hangout with you guys, you know. And so we're just going to be doing a simple reading vlog, just reading some fun stuff, hopefully having a good time, hanging out, hopefully getting to some good books. The stuff that I'm currently reading, I'm not super into, but hopefully we can move on to some stuff that I will be enjoying. So I do have two things that I am currently reading. Right now, I am working on reading Bloody Soul by Sonia Patel, and I only have about 60 pages left in this. This book is about our main character. His name is Rocky. He lives in South Korea, and his dad is the head gang boss of, like, the biggest gang in Seoul. And, I mean, I can't really describe much of the plot because there isn't really much of a plot that's going on. There's not really a lot happening, but this book is kind of written very poorly in the fact that there is no plot. There's very little character development. Our main character is somebody who, like, he expects to be inheriting this gang in the future, and yet at the same time, he is, like, so appalled to learn that his dad, like, tortures and kills people, even though that's what gangs do. And also, he randomly, for some reason, decides that the girl that he has been viciously and horrifically bullying for the past, like, 4 years of his life, all of a sudden, he just now thinks that she's cute and wants to protect her. And we're trying to do, like, an enemies to lovers type thing, I guess, but it's done really poorly. And just so much about this book is just so bad, and I'm just trying to kind of, like, force my way through to the end so that I can be done with this. The only good thing that I do enjoy about this book is that it does have a good depiction of OCD. Most of the time when you see OCD being depicted, it's just as a character who is very germophobic and, like, washes their hands a bunch, but in this, Rocky counts a lot of things. He's going back to make sure that his door is unlocked, like, multiple times. Like, he does things that are more typical of more standard OCD and the way that OCD works. So I do enjoy that. It just would be nice if that type of good representation could be brought throughout the rest of the book, because so many of the characters just feel so poorly written and so flat, and just, like, nothing that is happening is truly realistic. He thinks about his mom constantly. She left 10 years ago, and yet every single little thing that happens in his life reminds him of his mom, to the point that it gets annoying and ridiculous, and kind of like, come on, guy. Like, move on. If you're going to be the head gangster of this big gang, like, maybe we shouldn't be crying over our mommy every, like, 20 pages. Like, I'm not one to, like, push toxic masculinity, but it's the way that this guy acts just does not feel realistic to what a hardcore gangster would be acting like, you know? And then the next book that I am reading, I'm actually listening to the audiobook for this, is Chlorine by Jade Song. I know that a lot of people really like this book and are really into it, which is why I added it to my TBR, but I'm about a third of the way through it right now, and I'm not super into it. One, there isn't really a lot going on in this. It's definitely like a character based book, and I'm somebody who likes a lot more plot based books or like a mix of character and plot. I can do character sometimes, but this isn't one that I'm really vibing with. And I think that the reason why it's just not really working out for me is because I've noticed recently with a lot of books that are supposed to be feminism books and books that have strong female characters is they're not really feminism books, they're rad fem books where we are relying heavily on bioessentialism and reinforcing the gender binary. It feels like a really hard theme in this book is that, oh, I, as a person who is of this gender, is better than people of the other gender. And I am superior because of my gender, and the other people who are a different gender of me are inferior. And that is not the way that feminism works. Feminism is about the equality of genders and recognizing that we are all people, and something like gender does not define you or make you better or worse than somebody else. Our main character is also a first generation of immigration. So, like, her parents moved here from China. And there are some aspects of her talking about being a child of immigrants that I'm not fully vibing with, I guess is the way to say it. She talks about how things like, oh, I was never a part of the carpool, and that's because my mom and I, like, didn't understand what the phrase carpool was. And, like, yeah, I can see how your mom would not know what carpool was, how you would think that, like, oh, it's not like people pooling together in a car, like everybody's driving to the pool, like all of this stuff. But as she got older, she didn't learn what the phrase carpool means. She didn't realize what it was and then become a part of the car. Like, I don't understand that. And then there's parts of it in which she's talking about how, like, she's 12 to 13 years old and yet doesn't know any of these American pop culture songs. And she says it's because they listen to Chinese music at home, and, like, I totally get that. Absolutely. But also, you're not homeschooled. You don't live exclusively at home and never interact with American culture. Like, do you not hear these songs when you're out at the mall, when you're at school, when you're interacting with your friends? Like, I don't, and it got to a point where I was like, am I just being a dumb white guy and just not getting this experience because it is just not my life that I have lived? And so I actually went to my roommate because he is also, like, first generation from immigrants. His parents immigrated here from America. And I was like, hey, what was your experience with American culture growing up? Like, did you know what these things were? Like, how did you end up encountering them? And he was like, oh, yeah, I definitely knew what they were because, yeah, we didn't listen to that stuff at home, but I encountered it at school. I encountered it out in the community. Like, I definitely knew what these things were. So I was like, okay, so I'm not being fully out there by expecting her to, at 13 years old, know who Eminem is. Like, so I guess I'm just really not connecting with this character at all. I'm not really connecting with the story that she's trying to tell. I want to continue on in it because there are aspects of it that I do like. Mainly the relationship that she has with her coach is very interesting because he is a groomery type person. And the thing that I like about this relationship, I don't like their relationship, it's not a good relationship, but I think it's a good depiction of this relationship because a lot of the times when we see these types of relationships in media, it's that the adult man, like, tries to go all of the way with the younger person. And here she is really talking about how he never, like, goes too far. He never does anything that would technically be considered inappropriate or something that you can really, like, go to the police about or, like, talk to your parents about. But a lot of the things that he says and does, and like the way that he interacts has a overtone of being inappropriate, and you can tell that there are like vibes of him getting something extra from these interactions that he should not be getting. So I do like that aspect of it, and I do want to see where that goes and how that develops. So I am going to continue on. I'm probably going to finish Chlorine because I do want to see like what type of plot develops. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now, is I'm going to be finishing Bloody Soul, and I'm going to be continuing on in Chlorine. So I have finished Bloody Soul, and this is a hard 1 star. Oh my god, I genuinely don't understand how this book even got published and how this is the author's 3rd book, when it is so obvious when reading this that the author does not understand how to create a character arc, how to put together a proper plot line. Like, it is just so confusing, the things that are happening in this story. The plot is so weak of our main character, like, figuring out that his dad is a bad guy, even though he sells drugs and is a gang boss. Like, yeah, obviously, he beat your mom to the point that she left you when you were 6. Like, why is it a revelation that your dad is a bad guy 10 years later? I don't understand how you could not have realized that this entire time. Also, his relationship with Hana, it makes 0 sense whatsoever. The author is trying to do this, like, enemies to lovers type thing, but does it so poorly. At the beginning of the book, the main character is bullying Hana, like, severely. He is so racist to her. He makes a rule that nobody in the school is allowed to talk to her at all. He literally makes her eat cigarette butts. And then all of a sudden he's like, actually, I think that she's cute, and now I want to protect her. Fuck off. No, absolutely not. Nothing really happens in the story to make him be like that, except, like, he sees that he's bullied her so much that she starts self-harming, and, like, all of a sudden he's like, oh my god, that's so horrible, like, now I want to be super nice. No, that is not the way that things work at all. Like, this was written by somebody who's supposed to be a social worker, and who's supposed to be based on her work working with teenagers, and I'm just like, have you not spoken to any of your clients? Like, there's no way that this is the way that anything works. Nothing in this book is realistic. All of the characters are so flat. Nothing makes sense. Every chapter feels so disconnected from the chapter that happened before. Oh my god, I hated this book so much. I was really skimming through the end just so that I could get through it and get over it, because I was so done with how poorly written this book was. And, like, yeah, I've had 1-star books before, but, like, not something this bad before. Oh my god, I can't think of anybody who would enjoy reading this. I can't think of a single person to recommend this to. This is just a truly bad book. So I have now finished Chlorine, and I'm going to be giving this book 2.5 stars. I originally was 30% of the way through it, and as I was continuing through the story today, I was still not really about it. I did go on Storygraph and look at some reviews, because I was like, oh god, am I the only person who is not really vibing with this story? And I did find several other reviews of people saying that it just wasn't really for them. I saw several other Chinese American people saying that they thought that Ren was not a very good depiction of Chinese American, and I was like, okay, so it's not just me. Thank goodness I'm not crazy out here. And I think part of the reason why I like really struggled with this is because Ren is the type of person where she cannot take any personal responsibility for anything that happens to her. And that is just so incredibly annoying to me. I cannot stand people who do that. Like, for example, I'm gonna kind of start talking about some spoilers, so if you want to read this book, maybe jump ahead a bit in this video. But, for example, she ends up going and getting a copper IUD and kind of has like a really negative experience around that. And she's like, oh my god, this is all my boyfriend's fault that this is happening to me. And it's like, no, girl. This is because you yourself decided that you did not want to use condoms and that you liked getting off on him hitting it raw and had a pregnancy scare because of that. Like, you are fully here because this is what you have decided for yourself. Like, you did not have to get the copper IUD. There are other, like, birth control options out there that you could have done. Like, everything that is happening right now is because of decisions that you have made for yourself. And then she ends up falling down and accidentally, like, getting a concussion. And later on is struggling with headaches. And she's like, oh my god, this is all the doctor's fault. And it's like, again, no, girl, this is your fault because you purposefully lied to the doctor about your recovery in order to get back into the pool sooner. Like, your doctor was very specifically saying, like, if you are experiencing these symptoms, then you should not be swimming again. Like, you should take your recovery very seriously. And you decided that you wanted to get back into the pool immediately and lied to him so that you would be able to do so. Like, this is your fault. This is not somebody else's fault. And then she's also like, she gets disqualified from a swimming meet that she goes to, and she's like, oh, this is the judge's fault. He must be racist towards me. And it's like, I really don't know. Like, yeah, that might be a factor into it, but seeing as multiple people are saying that you were swimming improperly, and the fact that you have a history of being an unreliable narrator, it kind of feels like you probably were swimming improperly, and you need to pay more attention to the stuff that you are doing and take responsibility for your actions and try a little bit harder if you want to actually get to the places that you're going. Now, I was like pretty bored with what was going on in the story because it's very heavily character based. But once you hit the 70% mark, the story takes a really hard turn, which I actually did really like. Because Ren decides that in order to try and swim better at her next swim meet, she literally sews her legs together in order to become a mermaid, which is just wild. And I absolutely love that. But also at the same time, the author kind of did not lead up to this. Like, there wasn't really like a show of her kind of like having a mental deterioration. I assume that this is supposed to be an effect of the brain injury that she had earlier when she fell down and concussed herself, but there wasn't really enough from the author to really link those two things together. So, not really about that. And also, it did really make me think of that Walrus movie where that guy gets surgically turned into a walrus. So that was crazy. I do have to say, I did really like that part where she ends up going off the deep end. Ha ha ha, this is a book about swimming. She goes off the deep end and literally sews her legs together and is convinced that she is a mermaid. But even after that, I was not super with it because she's in the hospital and yet never meets with a therapist, never is like given any sort of treatment for her clearly like delusion that she's having. Her friend breaks her out of the hospital and like brings her to a river or whatever and sets her free, except their relationship has not really been codependent enough for me to believe that she would do that. Like, it kind of sets it up that they're in this, they have like romantic desires for each other, but the relationship that they've had like throughout the book so far like does not really support me believing that this friend would just fully buy into this delusion and be like, okay, swim, be free, we like no. I really wish that I could have liked this book more than I did. And I really wished that I could have been in it more, but there definitely was not enough there for me, unfortunately. For the next thing that I'm going to be reading, I want to move on to something that I do feel like I am going to be enjoying. So I'm going to do Animorphs, the graphic novel. This is the third in the series. I have always grown up hearing about how messed up the Animorphs series is, but I never got into it when I was a kid because I could never really figure out which book was the first book and like what order they went in. I kind of just saw random books at the library. And did you know that there are 54 books in this series? Like, that's wild. That is so many books. There are only 5 graphic novels right now, but there are 54 books in the series, and I am currently on the 3rd. I do not know how far I'm going to get, but I am enjoying it so far. Seeing them do the transformations is pretty wild because you see them like mid transformation, and it's definitely, oh my goodness. We have Tobias on the cover for this one, which I'm hoping we're getting more into him because he is my favorite, and he kind of wasn't really much of a character in the last one, so I am hoping we get... Oh, I didn't realize that we had so much of a glare on it. I am hoping that we are able to get more into it, and I'm excited to read this one. Good morning! So, when I woke up this morning, I actually realized that yesterday was Valentine's Day, and I did absolutely nothing in order to celebrate, I guess, in recognition of Valentine's Day. I mean, I don't really think that I could have come up with something that would have been good to do for Valentine's Day, because the logical thought would be to read romance books. And I am not really somebody who is into romance. I don't really have any romance, so I don't think that I would have really been able to come up with anything anyway. And as somebody who is like chronically single, I think that kind of just would have made me a little bit sad to just be sitting home alone, reading about other people being in love. So I'm actually kind of glad that I low-key forgot about it. I did, however, like we talked about yesterday, read the 3rd graphic novel for Animorphs, and I also realized that I did not explain what this book series is about, if you are somebody who is not super familiar with Animorphs. The only thing that I really knew about it was that it was kids who could turn into animals. And what actually happens in the first book is that these 5 kids who are cutting through a construction site after going to the mall one day come across a dying alien. And this alien informs them that apparently their world has been invaded by a different alien race called the Yerks. I think that's how you pronounce it. And these Yerks are like little worm things that crawl into your ear and can end up like inhabiting their host, like possessing the body. And so this dying alien needs their help to try and defeat the Yerks. And he has this box that when these kids touch it, gives them the ability to start transforming into animals. They can't do like any animal right away. You have to like find an animal and touch it in order to like absorb its DNA to then transform into the animal, but that is how the kids kind of become animorphs. And that is what like the big overarching goal is to try and defeat this alien race from taking over the earth. And one of the things about being an animorph is that you can only morph into your animal form for 2 hours. And then once the 2 hours has passed, like you're kind of stuck like that forever if you don't morph back. And so one of the things that happens at the end of the first book, spoilers for this 20-year-old book series, 30-year-old book series, at the end of the first book, one of the kids, Tobias, accidentally stays in his hawk form for too long and thus is stuck as a hawk for forever, I guess. Like, they're hoping that maybe they can do something in the future to try and put him back into his normal body, but really for now, he's just a hawk forever. And I'm not 100% sure what that means for, like, his lifespan. Like, is he going to live a normal Red Hawk lifespan? Is he going to live a normal human lifespan? Like, I'm not really sure. And so this book, the third book in this series, really focuses on Tobias and Tobias's struggle with being a hawk for basically the foreseeable future, forever, really. Tobias is kind of, I guess, the best character to have gotten stuck as an animal because his parents are presumably dead. He lives with his aunt and uncle, but they don't really care about him. He has been missing at this point for weeks, and literally nobody has noticed. Like, not even the school, which is very concerning because there are literal laws about this where, like, if a kid does not show up to school, if they don't have a doctor's note, if their parents are not calling and being like, yes, they're homesick with me, that type of thing, like, the school legally has to call the police and notify social services about that. And yet, they have not done that. They do not seem to have noticed that Tobias is no longer going to school and that nobody knows where he is. That is something that I have noticed that they have not really like brought up in this at all, but this really focuses on Tobias's super struggling with being a hawk and the fact that he doesn't really know if he's a human anymore, if he should just fully accept that he's a hawk and just like go full hawk mode and just live as a hawk and like eat mice and stuff like that. He's been trying to hold on to his humanity by eating like normal human food instead of like killing animals and eating them raw. And it gets so bad that Tobias literally becomes suicidal at one point in this book. Like, full out, I'm not exaggerating. In this book that's made for 8-year-olds, Tobias, like, ends up attempting to kill himself because he is struggling so much with the fact that now he is a hawk and he will probably be a hawk for the rest of his life. It is just wild. It is so good. I am absolutely loving it. I am such a sucker for a young boy character who is all alone and nobody cares about him and he feels like so trapped in everything that's going on for him. Like, I absolutely love that. I do have the next 2 books in the series, and these are the like print written versions as opposed to the graphic novel version. So I am interested to see like the difference between how the story is going to be portrayed when it's written in words as opposed to just seeing everything in pictures. And last night I was also able to read the first 3 volumes of the manga Kaiju number 8. I originally got into this because my friends like showed me the first few episodes of the anime, and so I decided to try reading it. And honestly, I don't think that I'm going to continue on in the series after these 3 volumes that I've read. It's not really for me. The plot and the characters and stuff are fine, but the world building is lacking so much that I just can't really do it. So what this story is about is it is about a world in which, you know, it's modern day Tokyo, Japan, and kaiju, which are giant monsters, regularly come and like invade the city that our main characters are living in, and our main character wants to fight against these kaiju, but a circumstance makes it that it turns him into a kaiju, and he can like transform back and forth between his kaiju self and his human self, and he, you know, joins the defense force to try and kill all the kaiju, but obviously he himself is also a kaiju, so there's all sorts of conflict going on there. Like I said, the story in and of itself is interesting and good, but it really seems as though the author has just thrown us into modern day Tokyo with zero consideration for what living in this type of world would be like. In a story like Attack on Titan, which is very similar to this, you know, their entire society is set up around the fact that Titans could attack them, they have these giant walls, they have their own kind of defense force, you know, the 3 different groups that take down Titans and all of that. They know quite a lot about Titans, all of this different stuff. It really makes sense how their society is set up around what is going on, you know? Whereas in this, even though kaiju have been attacking humans and humans have been fighting them for countless generations at this point, the city has no anti-kaiju infrastructure. For some reason, they seem to know very little about kaiju and like their makeup and how they work. There has been no attempt to try and make the city like a safer place to live. It's just regular, like the way that Tokyo is now is the way that it is, with these giant monsters showing up very frequently and just destroying things. And it seems like the only defense that they seem to have come up with after hundreds of years of doing this is to just turn on a siren to be like, oh, kaiju's here, and then a small group of people will show up and shoot the kaiju with guns. And they're very big, they're massive, and will destroy blocks and blocks of the city at a time. And this happens like once a week, once every other week. So I honestly like don't even understand how the city is standing, because at this rate it seems like the entire city should be completely destroyed. Like, how are they rebuilding after all of these kaiju attacks that are constantly happening? How do they not have any sort of like kaiju detection in order to be able to prepare for these attacks? Like, they literally just magically show up in the middle of the city all the time. It's not like they're like coming in from the outside or anything like that. They literally just show up in the middle of the city. Some of them seem to like come from underground. How have we not created anything better than what is currently going on? I'm very confused. Like, if this was something that has only been going on for like maybe like 10 years or something like that, I could see that. But no, we have established at this point that this has been happening for a long time. For, I can't even say how long, but it's been like for so long that one of the characters is like, oh yeah, I'm descended from a clan that's like been fighting kaiju this entire time. So it's been quite a while that this has been going on. So I don't understand how we do not have like any sort of infrastructure, programs, like more science, like a lot of like, it seems like the author has really not thought about the way that this type of world would work. And I can't do it. I cannot do the fact that it doesn't make sense the way that this world is working right now. So I'm not going to be continuing on in the series, unfortunately, but hey, that's just the way it works sometimes, you know? The next thing that I am planning on reading is I am going to focus on Cross-Dressing Villainess Cecilia Sylvie by Hiroro Akizakura. I never read the author names before. I should. I picked this up from the manga section. I reasonably assumed, based on this cover, that this is a manga, but it's not. Look at this. It has regular ass words in it. How dare they? There are a couple of pictures sometimes, but a large majority of this is just words. I don't fully remember what this is about. I believe it's a girl who's cross-dressing as a boy for some reason. Really, the reason why I'm picking this up out of everything right now is because I have something like 290 books on my TBR, and I really, really, really want to get that number down. That is way too many books to have on my TBR. So I'm kind of trying to focus on like more of the shorter books that I have to try and get through as much as I can in this period of time. And I guess my goal right now is to get down to 270, which is still a really big number, but is an achievable goal, I feel. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. So we're going to start reading Cross-Dressing Villainess, and I will check in with you guys and let you know what this is about. So it is the next day, and I have now finished Cross-Dressing Villainess Cecilia Sylvie. And I am going to be giving this book 4 stars. Now, what this is about is it is about a girl who originally was very into dating sims, but when she dies in a fire, she gets isekai'd into one of her dating sims. But instead of being the main character of the dating sim, she ends up being the main character's love rival, and she's very concerned because in every single ending for this dating sim, the love rival ends up dying. So she's like, oh god, I'm gonna die. So her plan is to start dressing as a boy so that she cannot be the love rival. But of course, things do not super work out, and she ends up getting herself into all of these like boys love situations, so she is technically still the love rival. Now, was this book good? No. No, not at all. But was it fun? Absolutely. This was so much fun to read. This book reads as though the author has directly translated a manga into text. So, like, when people are surprised, they're like, "Gah!" Or when somebody that they like does something cute, they end up, like, having a coughing fit. And, like, they're doing all of these things that really only exist in manga and acting like manga characters. So, at first, when I started reading it, I was not into it at all. And I was like, oh god, this is bad. This is terrible. But once I got used to it and kind of like bought into that is the way that this book is going to go, I did start really liking it. It does kind of read like a parody because of that, and I don't think it's supposed to. But there's just so many like silly fun things going on in this book that just makes it enjoyable. Like I said, the main character accidentally gets herself into like all of these boys love situations, and she's trying to like manipulate the story because she's played this dating sim like so much that she knows what all the different endings are, and she knows like who has to activate what and like all this stuff. And so she's trying to like behind the scenes manipulate all of this stuff, and that's how she gets herself into these situations. And it even goes so far as to her classmates are writing fan fiction and drawing fan art about her and like other boys in the school. It's very funny. It's hilarious, just the things that are going on in this book. Am I going to continue on in the series? No, Probably not. I did have a good time with it, but like I said, I have like 290 books on my TBR. And if I am not like falling desperately in love with a series, then I don't think it's a good idea for me to try and like continue on with it. I have so many other things that I need to read and to get to. Like maybe at some point in the future, when I have a lot less stuff that I need to read, I will come back to this. But right now, I do not currently have any plans continuing on in this series. One of the things that I do have to say, though, is because this was about a dating sim, it kind of made me want to play a dating sim. And so I went onto Steam and I was looking at free stuff. Lila, do you have to do that now? And I ended up finding this super cute dating sim called Our Life. And it's not the type of dating sim where there's like a whole bunch of different boys and you get to talk to each of them and have like these different paths you go down. It's about you living as a child. It starts in childhood and a new boy like moves into the neighborhood and you befriend him and you grow up together, and it's about your budding relationship and being childhood friends and all of that. And it is just so adorable. I absolutely love Cove, who is the boy who moves in. I'm still in the part where we're still very young. We're kids. We're just having a fun summertime. But he's just so sweet. Like I said when we were talking about Animorphs, I am all about a boy character who feels like incredibly isolated and alone and is just like going through it, and that's who Cove is. He's moved here, he doesn't want to be here, he's really struggling with things in his life, and he's really standoffish to like everybody else except for you, the main character, and it's just, I don't know, he's just so adorable. He's such a sweet little boy. I cannot wait to see how he grows up and what things are like when we get older and stuff like that. I'm just having a really fun time with it. It's super cute. I don't really play dating sims much at all. It's probably been years since I last played a dating sim, but it's been fun, and I gotta throw it out to this book for getting me to try this dating sim, and I'm having a good time with it. Alright, so I think I'm probably going to end this reading vlog here. Thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, this was supposed to be something to kind of try and get my mind off of all of the horrors that are happening in the world right now. Hopefully it got your mind off of some of the horrible things that are happening. Things are bad, but it's still really important for me to find ways to create joy in my life. It's really important for you to find ways to create joy in your life. It's really easy to get sucked into like the doom and the doom scrolling, but we will never achieve anything or get anywhere if we are all so depressed and struggling with everything that the only thing that we can think about is terribleness and horror and like, I know it's very difficult, but we gotta be able to have some sort of positive mindset, look forward to the future, create these little pockets of fun for ourselves and for each other, and just get through this, do what we can. I'm here for me, I'm here for you. Lila wants to go, she doesn't want to be here. But yeah, that's kind of it. I am hoping that I can spend more time making more of these reading vlogs, more book videos, more movie reviews, stuff like that, so that we can have a little space here where we're having a fun and good time. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you like this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more like it. But besides that, make sure that you stay safe and have a fantastic day. Bye.